for Walgreens and it just involves authorizing me to sign to the state by April 18th, and then we would be eligible to receive direct allocations as a result of the opioid settlement with the state of Virginia. So you do have a resolution in front of you, R 2023-14, that would provide authorization for me to sign the necessary forms to participate.
Great.
I do not know how much in funding that would be at this time.
Can we get a motion to approve? Any questions?
I move we approve resolution R 2023-14, Nelson County Board of Supervisors resolution approving the county's participation in the proposed settlement of opioid-related claims against all those.
Sure.
All those entities.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Second from Mr. Parr. Any discussion? No discussions. We vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any abstentions, objections? Hearing none, shows unanimous. Moving on to proposed amendments to Chapter 3, Animals. Kevin, you want us to do this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll introduce this, and Mr. Wright is here to help answer any questions you might have regarding what we're proposing. Okay, and today is just consideration of authorizing some code amendments for public hearing. So the impetus for this was for the board to consider a livestock at large amendment to the ordinance that would prohibit livestock from running at large. While we're in our ordinances, our county attorney likes to take a look and see what kind of housekeeping items he can make while we're already working in the ordinance. So the proposed draft really is to authorize a public hearing to receive public input to incorporate provisions pertaining to defense law as it relates to livestock, some proposed fee changes, and removal of sections that are duplicative of state law. So I believe of primary interest, let me get to the livestock. It's toward the end. As you can see, Mr. Payne has struck through a lot of the code section that is duplicative of state law. All right, here we go. So the main item under consideration is adding Article 5, defense law, to the animal, Chapter 3, the animal ordinance. So you would add Section 3-81, boundaries declared lawful fences. And this says the boundary line of each lot or tract in this county is hereby declared a lawful fence to any domesticated livestock or poultry. And then Section 3-82 would be unlawful for livestock to run at large, and says it is unlawful for the owner or manager of any domesticated livestock or poultry to allow willfully or negligently any such animal as to which the boundaries of lots or tracts of land have been constituted a lawful fence to run at large beyond the limits of his own lands within the county. Any owner or manager who allows such animal to run at large shall be deemed to have violated this section, which shall be punishable as a Class 1 misdemeanor. And the state law reference is Virginia Code 55.1-2820. And then Section 3-83 would be added for the recovery of costs, and states when domesticated livestock or poultry running at large are recovered by animal control or law enforcement, then all costs associated with recovery and confinement of such animals shall be the responsibility of the owner or manager. Such costs include, but are not limited to, the engagement of private citizens to capture the animals, fees for transporting the animals, boarding expenses for confinement by the county or on the property of others, and expenses incurred in connection with the sale or disposition of such animals. We haven't had this before, primarily because we have been a fence-out county. And once we changed that law and made us fence in, it allowed us to also have a livestock at large ordinance. then the fees that we have included for the board's consideration, right now that would be changed are related to the adoption fees and the daily impoundment fees of animals that have not been changed in quite some time. That right now.
And at this time, just to remind the board, this is just sending it to a public hearing.
Right, this is just authorizing the ordinance amendments presented here to go to public hearing. I believe Mr. Wright had submitted some information regarding the current fees and what the proposed fees are.
All right.
I thought I had it marked in my ordinance, but.
Kevin, you know the dollars and cents were?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking to find. I know the daily impoundment fee would be changed from $5 to $10, and then adoption fees themselves will also change.
They're on that last page. Daily income fee compliant K9 $10. Daily income fee non-compliant K9 $20.
Here we go, I'm sorry. It's section 3-40. So let's see. In connection with the adoption of a dog, the fee would go from $70 to $160. It includes spaying or neutering of the animal, rabies vaccination, a tattoo of the adoption number, and a licensed tax certificate. For cats, it would go from $65 to $90, which would also include spaying or neutering of the animal, rabies vaccination, and a tattoo of the adoption number. And I don't know if Mr. Wright can speak to when the original fees were in effect. You know, how long we had those fees?
Well, I've been here 10 years, so it's been way too much. That last I saw was adopted in 2000 was the last show that I.
Okay.
So about 23 years.
Sounds good. You put it to public hearing. And all we need to do is vote on resolution
Right.
R 2023.
That is correct.
Attorney, you want to read
I've got a question
first?
In reading over this, I have to say it was pretty complicated to understand exactly what the resolution covers. And, you know, it was clear that with all the things that were being struck, and all the things that remained in chapter 3. I'm just wondering, is there any way this can be simplified for the public so that they can understand a little, make it a little more easy for them to know what to comment on? Because I'm afraid that if they don't have an understanding about what this really is and does, that we will get a lot of comments that don't really relate. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, certainly. And I think the public hearing notice itself would be a lot more explanatory than the resolution authorizing the public hearing. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We would do our best to be very
Great,
clear
okay.
on what exactly the public hearing is on.
Because I think I may have my head wrapped around this, but I'm not even sure. So,
I understand.
Any other questions for Candy or Kevin? Hearing none, can we get a motion to approve R 2023-15?
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second? Second, Mr. Harvey, any further discussion? No, let's do vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Shipman Historic District Planning Grant Application. Thank you, Kevin. See you at the next one.
Okay, Ms. Maureen Kelly will present on the Shipman Historic District Planning Grant application.
good afternoon. It's cost share grant time at the at Virginia Department of Housing, Department of Historic Resources. And counting in my head how many historic districts we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're currently working on the Warminster Historic District, so that's 6. And we've, in the back of a lot of people's minds, Shipman is the next one. Arrington Shipman is the next place that we'd really like to do some survey work. I think you have in front of you the application for the cost share grant. I've had at least 2 meetings, if not 3, with our folks at the Department of Historic Resources. And what's happening right now is they are, we made a good list of properties that we think should be included in the survey. I just got a call today from the folks at Oak Ridge, and for the first time since I've been here, they're interested in being involved in this process, so that's pretty exciting too. So what happens now is we will have a discussion, continued discussion with Department of Historic Resources. I need your guidance and input on boundaries, and then we can talk about the cost associated with the different, there are 2 different approaches that they are suggesting. One is a phased approach, and the other one is do it all, and that's a little bit more expensive. I understand that it is a cost share grant, so the county would need to appropriate at least 50% of whatever the cost of the survey is. And I would encourage you to do a little bit more than 50%, because that's how, honestly, that's part of the rating system, is at what level is the county supporting it. We could do it with in-kind services such as staff help and some other copying and nailing of things like we normally do anyway, just to make sure the constituents, the residents, understand what's going on, and public meeting space and things like that. So what we're talking about is approximately 150 properties in total. So either the thought is do it all at once, but that is 32,000 approximately. And then, or we could start with just what's called a preliminary information form, which is a much, it's an easier, it's a lot less information, and then just do some property surveys just to get started. And again, Department of Historic Resources estimates at this time that's about an $8,000 budget, and then our share would be at least $4,000. So that's the direction I'm looking for today. The application, I believe, is due April the 7th. I started on the application, but I didn't want to get too far into it until we have this meeting.
Okay. Any questions for Maureen? There's no action expected from us, right? Or is there?
Yeah, if I'm gonna do the, if I gotta get the application in, I need to know what your pain point is.
Oh, what our pain point? Pain, dollars and cents. What is that number? How much money?
Well, it's either a little bit more than 16,000 or a little bit more than 4,000.
Skip, it's your district.
I'm trying to figure it out. We're talking about making the whole Shipman an historic district, or just?
It would hopefully include the village of Shipman, but then some boundaries around that.
Is it a good thing for the people of Shipman?
We have 5 going on 6 historic districts, and at the public meeting, I always ask property owners who may have properties in 1 or more districts I ask the question. I'll just tell you, at the South Rockfish Rural Historic District meeting, I asked Mr. McClellan, who has properties in both districts, I asked him how the Livingston Historic District had affected his property values, maintenance, anything. And he said, honestly, that there was absolutely no change in the way he operated his business or those properties. And that is a huge relief. These are voluntary districts. That means You can paint your house purple or burn it down. The importance of this process is that we survey these beautiful places that sometimes fall down, go away, are completely renovated to something that they weren't. Historic properties are those more than 50 years old, so we're just surveying the older properties. There's also an archaeological component to this. They look at graveyards on people's properties. They look at the historical fabric of those particular communities. And Shipman has such an important railroad and African-American culture related to it. They are very eager to survey this Arrington, Shipman area.
So, we had this conflict over the building in Noseport, where there was argument that it was part of the historic district, so that the building could not be.
That does not exist in Nelson County.
Yes.
Those protections do not exist on those homes.
Okay, well,
You want to do 4K or 16K?
16K.
Is that a motion? Mr. Reed, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so the 16K covers all the yellow dots on the map.
We're not sure yet. We need to, now we're back to DHR, but we're hopeful that 16K would get us close.
We can add to that.
Oh, they will add many. That was just a quick 5-minute exercise from my head, just thinking about all the really cool places in Shipman and Arrington.
So,
So if we have a historic district, it makes sense that there would be some, at least preliminary assumed boundaries.
Yes, and there are rules about that. So if something is like too far out, like I'm not sure about, I don't know. We're just gonna have to let DHR come out and do a quick, not quick, but an afternoon windshield tour to see, because you have to have natural boundaries. You can't skip things. There's a lot of rules.
So this would extend from Oak Ridge all the way down to Red Apple Orchard.
Hopefully.
Nobody knows.
We don't know yet.
I mean, there's a really great group of people who live on Peavine Lane,
Yeah?
in case you ever wondered.
Okay.
A lot of history back there.
So one of the results of the larger investment in this is that DHR would work with us and come up with a map of what the boundaries of that would be, whether it be larger or smaller.
Correct.
So if we dealt with this individually, the properties individually, it would be 4,000 for each property.
No, that's a whole different program. This program is specific to districts.
Nobody's getting.
I mean,
But individual property owners can work with Department of Historic Resources.
I just feel, to be honest, having a conversation with people who live there about this issue.
And what normally happens, like we're just kicking off Warminster. We just had the first informational meeting a week or so ago at the library, and we sent out letters to all the property owners in the proposed district as well as adjacent property owners. And it was a really good meeting. So, because we want people to know what a historic district is and what it's not. Because people get nervous. A lot of questions about private property rights.
All right. What else does the board think?
I think there's great value in creating a Shipman Historic District. I think the only way we can possibly do that is to let DHR have their way with it and see what they come up with. And the other thing I'd ask is that when the public meetings happen about this, please keep us informed so that we can be a part of it.
The public meetings are a little bit further into the process, but we're really very careful about keeping the constituents in,
Right.
because it's their historic district.
Right, and it is the small. If we can attend those meetings, or at least can pencil them in, gives us a better opportunity to be an advocate.
You got it. The one real value for the voluntary historic districts is that if a property owner within that district chooses to do a substantial rehabilitation according to the superintendent of the interior standards, which is pretty high threshold, basically it's, you can't replace the windows. I mean, that's the biggest one. It has to remain historically authentic, and it's an expensive renovation. But if indeed a property owner would choose to go in that direction, they can get up to 45%, 45% from federal tax credits and 40% from the Commonwealth tax credits. So there is value if a property owner wants to go in that direction, but it's a process. So that's a benefit of it. But other than that, we're just recording, and I will tell you that the historic districts, the information that we have on, there's a file on every single property in the Livingston Historic District. And it's upstairs at the library, and those are very well used files. And that makes me happy.
Okay. Is there any dissension to 16 grand before we vote on it? So I know if we're doing roll call vote now. Okay. You made a motion to up to 16.
Up to what?
$16,000. Is that your motion?
That is-
Okay, that's his motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. Whatever. I just did an acclamation. And I think it worked. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? No, passes unanimously.
So much.
Thank you.
So, just a quick question.
Mari, keep running.
Right.
No, don't
It's
stop.
not limited to these things that are mentioned.
No, it's not. It's their DHR is gonna draw the picture with everyone.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to reports, Candy.
All right. First of all, I'd like to apologize to the board. I'm not feeling my best today, so I feel like I did a great job on the animal ordinance, but hopefully I'll do a little better with my report. All right, first item on the list is our comprehensive plan. The project website is www.nelson2042.com. The third of our 4 scheduled joint work sessions of the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission will be held tomorrow, March 15th at 6:30 p.m. And that will be in the old Board of Supervisors room here at the courthouse. We will review the draft chapters pertaining to housing and economy tomorrow night. As far as our county website redesign, Maureen tells me in February, the consultant worked on new layouts based on our feedback, customized the theme, and started creating the style guide to include the color palette, fonts, and general page layout. So we are in stage 1 of content organization and initial site structure for menus and navigation. Our Piney River wastewater pump station repairs were completed in late February, and we had to do some additional work to reprogram the variable frequency drives, and these operate the pumps at the pump station. As far as I know, operations are back to normal there. As noted during our VDOT report, the 151 corridor study is moving along. VDOT has released a survey as part of the corridor study, which can be accessed at www.metroquestsurvey.com/VZ37. We also have a link on the county website to the survey and the VDOT project page, Route 151 corridor study, Nelson County projects / Virginia Department of Transportation. Also has links to the survey. There will be 2 public engagement sessions related to the corridor study update that will be held within the study area, with the first being on April 7th at the Rocky Valley Community Center from 4 to 6 p.m. County administration was advised recently by the Amherst County Department of Planning and County Administrator's Office of an Amherst County solar project going on that is a utility scale project on property in Amherst County that adjoins the Virginia Blue Ridge Railway Trail. They've asked for a special exception from Amherst County. The project site will utilize parcels that are 431.4 total acres, with approximately 169 acres being used for solar arrays. These parcels have frontages on 2508 Patrick Henry Highway and 1187 Roses Mill Road. County staff, including Dylan Bishop, Jerry West, and Maureen Kelly, met on site with the project developer and advised that due to the topography and anticipated sight lines, the solar arrays should not be visible from the railway trail. The Amherst Planning Commission will hold a public meeting on this project on Thursday, March 16th at 7 p.m. in the Amherst County Administration Building. On March 7th, county staff applied for a Virginia Outdoors Foundation Preservation Trust Fund grant opportunity, and the application was submitted by Jerry West for $195,000 in funding for the Sturt Nature Park property with no local match required. The grant funds are proposed to cover costs related to a professional survey of the property, master planning work, and development of a trail system, entrance, and parking area. If awarded the grant, staff will seek the board's approval for grant acceptance. In terms of other opioid abatement funding opportunities, county staff met with Region 10 staff to discuss the potential for a regional application to the State Opioid Abatement Authority. These grants are competitive and are in addition to the direct allocations we're getting from the settlement funds. So this grant would benefit the member localities of Region 10, including Nelson, City of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Savannah, Greene, and Louisa. The proposal would use approximately $1.3 million in these grant funds to expand their crisis response services, CTAC services, and community outreach services that are currently available to its members. As reported by Region 10, in a memo, 55% of the adult client population they serve in Nelson has a diagnosis of a substance abuse disorder. So that was interesting to me. These applications must be submitted by a member locality who would also serve as the fiscal agent on behalf of Region 10 and its members. And Albemarle County has agreed to serve in this role. Bless you. Region 10 will present this proposal at the April board meeting and also seek the board's official support of the regional application, which is a grant requirement. The application submission deadline for this funding round is May 5th. In terms of the new office building for social services, PMA is proceeding with having the consulting engineering subcontractor Timmons Group conduct the more in-depth geotechnical work on the Callow Hill site, which includes 15 borings, analysis, and reporting, as well as seismic refraction to identify the soil thickness and depth to identify weathered rock and solid rock in proximity of the proposed building, parking, and drive areas. We're still trying to verify the time frame on completion of this work. A little bit about the FY24 budget. We're hoping to begin sessions later this month on the 28th, if that should work out for the board. We reviewed the draft calendar earlier today, and the state budget has not been finalized with the General Assembly yet, and they're supposed to resume their work in April. The school division approved its FY24 budget at their March 9th meeting, with the additional requested local funding being $1,582,639 for a total request of $18,884,261. We have provided the board with the Packard School Division budget information, and the school division has requested the opportunity to present their budget at a joint meeting with the boards on April 20th, just prior to their regular meeting agenda. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank school division staff and the school board for keeping at least myself apprised of their budgetary decisions and what it was looking like in terms of the local contribution. So I do appreciate that. I know it was a priority for the board and for staff to not have any surprises in this budget cycle, and I think we've worked well on that this year. In terms of the Albemarle-Charlottesville Regional Jail, Mr. Barton may be able to expand on this in his report. But the Regional Jail Authority Board approved its FY24 budget last week in the total amount of $9,453,000, which was a 4.6% increase over last year. Member contributions are based on the individual member's 5-year average percentage of population, and Nelson's percentage increased from 12.99% in FY23 to 14.74% in FY24. This translates into a $219,783 increase in our share of operations, for a total share of about 1.3 million, almost 1.4. This includes an estimated share of interest-only debt service for the anticipated interim financing related to the proposed jail renovations of $38,766. Proceeding with the interim financing will commence once the governor has signed a budget containing the funding for the 25% reimbursement of eligible costs for the renovation project provided by the state.
Do you want to talk about this now or later?
It's up to you.
Now, you said you were gonna fund it for free, right?
Yeah, I'm personally.
Yeah.
Couple things. You know, the amount of money that we're having to contribute to the amount of prisoners from Nelson County has, took a huge leap, 3 years ago? Two,
At least,
3
I
years
think
ago, and it hasn't abated. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think it's at least holding steady at a higher rate, and since our shares are determined on a 5-year average, if it stays at that same level or increases, then our share is going to keep increasing, because we're losing the years where our population percentage was lower and now we're gaining the higher.
So, I mean, I'm sure there's a valid reason for this, or I'm not sure, I don't know. But I think Mr. Rutherford should come in and explain to us sometime why this is the case. The other thing is the jail renovation, which has become somewhat controversial because of certain antagonism to jails in general. And most of this renovation has to do with increasing the quality of the jail and the quality of the services, and to deal with recidivism. For instance, the Charlottesville, Albemarle, Nelson Regional Jail has a lower incarceration rate based on the population of those areas. There's less people in jail in this facility than any other place in the state. Now, in the renovation, there's not a request for more cells. It's a request to create services that will, I think, realize that in America, incarceration of people is a real problem, and we need to do something to make sure, or to enable some of these people who end up in jail not to go back again. And I think I can speak for Candy that, since I've been on that board, I've been really impressed by the people who work there. One of the things that really impresses me is that the amount of years people seem to stay there. I had a brief experience working in a facility a juvenile facility, and the turnover was enormous. I mean, almost close to 90% per year. And this isn't happening at this place, this jail. And people who I know who have experience with this find that this jail is superior to other jails in Virginia. And, you know, I'm inclined to support what they want to do. But it's gonna cost some money.
That is correct.
I don't know, you know, what else to add. I'll
Is
answer
there-
your questions.
As it relates to the state, isn't the state contributing a certain percentage?
25%.
They're 25%.
Yeah, it's earmarked in the budget, but we don't know it's final until the governor signs it, so.
Sure, gotcha. Well,
It's about 12 million, I think.
And this will not impact us, trying to remember we're 3 years out, or 2
Right.
years out.
Well, in FY '24, we'll have this interest-only payment, and then I think it's 25, we start seeing,
That's when you actually start
I
seeing
I
it.
think at 24,
That's-
are we gonna have to pay for the study or
We'll only have-
the actual planning of the jail?
right, we'll only have the interim financing, interest-only to pay for, which will finance the preliminary architectural costs and things.
I mean, you know, you talk to the sheriff and, you know, it's not ideal that we run those people up there. It's very costly, to run them up and run them back. I don't know what other alternative we have unless you want to get in the business of
No.
making a jail.
This has been a discussion in prior years about what, because of the judicial differences in having to run folks up there. I mean, there was at one time, and I think it was either 18 or 19, Mr. Carter did a really light study on what that could look like. And to buy your way, one, you have to buy your way out of a jail. You have to pay them to leave. And then you have to pay another entity to go in. And the cost of doing all that was just like, wow, you could just build you a jail, you know, at that rate. And that's not something I don't foresee us. And Mr. Harvey, you probably were around at the time when they were pushing us out of our Nelson County jail and put us in the Albemarle County jail. They basically paid our way into that to get out of the jail business for Nelson. When was that? The 90s? 80s? Long time. You know, ACRJ is exceptional. I mean, after my tour and getting to interact with some of the folks on the ground, you know, they have really good practices in recidivism as well, and the mental health aspect, and those things cannot be dismissed in the atmosphere that we are today and the criminals that we have. You know, a lot of folks need a lot of help. So I guess you just keep us posted as to when things become pertinent, right?
Absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah, I think nothing else is gonna be required until the governor's budget is approved and it has that 25% in there, and
Sure.
that's a tangible thing.
The other thing I should mention is that Colonel Coomer, who runs the jail, who run it for 20 years now, talks in a very positive way about the relationship between the jail and Nelson County. You know,
He certainly does. Yeah, and they're very happy and willing to provide tours to anyone that's interested in touring the facility.
and any questions, I mean, he's been here several times, you know, and willing to answer any questions of what he wants to do.
Comp study.
Okay, nothing much to say there. Staff is continuing to review and vet the information provided by the consultant. We just want to have a better understanding of the resulting pay classifications. And obviously there'll be more discussion about this during budget work sessions with the board. The last few items, there is no change from the February report for short-term rentals, the regional library agreement review, the the Gladstone Depot TAP grant or the Renaissance Ridge Housing Development. So all that former information is there if you'd like to read that. Any questions or anything I can expand on?
So, I know this is probably a Dylan question, but if Piney River Solar LLC were to come to us and ask to put up a 431.4 acre solar farm, what's in place for us right now?
I'm not intimately familiar with it, but we do have a large-scale solar ordinance, so we are prepared, I think, if this were to happen.
It'd be a special use permit. I think
Yeah,
all-
they call it a special exception in Amherst, but it'd be a special use permit, most likely. But, yeah, something I should read up on because it may be in our future, I'm not
I
sure.
mean, it doesn't get much closer.
Right,
And it concerns me that the solar arrays should not be visible from the railway trail. I don't like should not. I mean,
well, that
I
might
know we
be
don't have-
that might be the language that I used. When Dylan and Jerry were down there, they were looking at the drawings and the site angles and things. And they feel like it won't be visible from
When
the
I
trail.
talked to Jerry, he was like you, it was more of a should not, hope not kind of thing. I just have concerns about that location, I was just curious.
Yeah,
It would be, I wish they had done like a balloon test like those cell towers do, you know,
mhm,
where you could see, picture
Right.
that if it's here, this is what your line of sight would be. But, not that we have any input in that, but
we can send you, the information we do have, the drawings that were provided to us on the sight lines and different things.
I think
Sure.
Who's doing that?
It's Piney River Solar LLC, but the site is in Amherst County.
it's,
Yeah, but who is putting it? So it's commercial electricity, right?
Yeah, it's an entity that's buying land and putting.
no, they're leasing land,
Oh, they're leasing land.
from someone. As soon as you cross on 151, crossing Amherst County, it's a farm on the left. As soon as you go right across from Ward Farm Road, that's the farm.
Isn't that the mine?
No, that's Maritime, it's on the Nelson, we get that. They get a solar farm.
That's a,
That's not an Amherst.
It's Wesley Brothers.
Yeah.
Farm. But, yeah, and then this company comes in, leases the land, puts a solar farm up, and
Sells it to
to the electric company. Yeah, it's not gonna benefit the local surrounding
Yeah, that was my
electricity
understanding.
users.
From what they said, that it would benefit
No,
Amherst County really.
no.
but taxes would they,
that would be Amherst taxes, not Nelson.
Right,
Yeah,
yes,
Amherst
yes, but in
tax.
terms of an energy, benefit, I don't think there's gonna be one,
Value
from what I
property,
understand.
right.
You know, I thought, speaking of taxes, I thought of something the other day. Ernie, you probably would remember. Remember when we first interacted with Firefly? And they wanted us to do that match, I think it was in 2019. And it was like $1.5 million, and instead of that, we call it $1.5 million in tax incentives on the infrastructure of fiber, or we give them, or it was like the fiber network, something in kind. Aren't we supposed to be getting some revenue off of that infrastructure?
Yes,
Do we know what that dollar looks like now, or when it starts, or started?
well, I mean,
It was supposedly supposed to be a sizable amount every year.
yeah, I have to look and see, I mean, we should get it as it comes online, as it's being used, I
Sure.
think.
Is
So we get a report from the SCC on the values, and then,
Does it
kind of
depreciate?
estimate the increase based on that.
Does the infrastructure depreciate over time, or is it, or is it?
I'm sure they're depreciating it over
On
time,
their side?
on their side, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious about that because that hit me the other day when we were thinking about our budgets. How does that come into play in our budget?
Right, it comes in revenue, public service tax, I believe. And I am estimating an increase based on comparing, I think it's 22 to 23 or 20, it might be at a lag, 21 to 22.
Okay.
Um,
I was just curious
Yeah.
because I thought about that and I remember it was like $500,000 a year if I remember correctly or something like that potential.
Maybe once it's all built,
Once
it
it's all
could
done.
be at that level.
Okay.
It's not there right now.
You understand how the venture companies,
Yeah, they can always make 7%.
when they put something there, 15% is added to their price of their product. That was all business about.
Dominion. I think the co-op's a little different, but they probably still do make money on their infrastructure bills. Anyways, that was just a thought I had. Any other questions for Candy? Hearing none, let's go on to board reports. Skip, you've been going first all day today. You go first.
Well, we talked about the jails, the work, what's it called?
The workforce thing you're on.
Workforce thing, yeah.
Are you going to this?
You know, they have various things that attempt to, right now it's finding workers, you know, and not much helping in Nelson County. On the 23rd, they are giving something at the high school. They're gonna set up a desk or something in the lunchroom. But, you know, I don't know, I have difficulty because the primary reason we can't find people to work, we talked about this too, is the amount of money you pay, you know? So I'm not exactly, you know, I'm not negative towards it. They do work for the people who need work and need to find a new way to work. And they do act on behalf of employers that are looking for workers. You know, but in Europe, almost every European country, the industries take responsibility for training their workers. And in this country, for some reason, industry likes to think, likes us to believe that it's the responsibility of the schools to prepare people for employment. And it doesn't surprise me because industry likes to pass off their costs onto someone else. So, you know, I wish it was doing something to help us, but I can't really say that that's the case.
What else you got?
That's it.
Mr. Harvey? Mr. Reed? Where did-
I was not at the TJPDC meeting. I was sick that week. I missed another meeting as well. But had I been there, I'm sure I would be reporting back to the housing summits on March 24th. Jesse will talk more about that. Because I can't really report on something I wasn't there. But I did want to report back that the field trip we took to the Larkin property, we had George Miller and Jennifer Fitzgerald there from the Service Authority, and they both got a firsthand look at Diller Creek. So it appears that we've now got some wheels moving so that we can try to see about getting a water plan for impoundment there and how that might affect, possible future development in Harrington, Livingston area, which I'm really excited to see go forward as soon as it can. So this is maybe partial directive, which is let's get going on this thing and see what we can find out. I know it's going to take, the county and the Service Authority together to make it happen. We've got a Service Authority board meeting coming up later this week, so Hopefully that'll be something that we take up there.
Try to get something dollars and cents on.
Right.
Which, it's really, I mean, I was hoping, I'm not.
No, it's just true, because you want.
I mean, when we were there, I wasn't sure how far the discussion had already gotten, and I didn't realize it was still nowhere.
Right.
So, I mean, put some fire under them, because whatever we do, we need to know what that is. And they're the only entity that has any ability to figure that out effectively.
Yeah, well, originally, the service authorities there to run things, and county was supposed to, be the entity by which things could get infrastructure built. That, of course, is not necessarily the case, but it's going to take the two of us working together to make that all happen. So
It's $1,000.
yeah, exactly.
Whatever that is.
That's what.
My understanding, I guess, from the service authority staff is it's gonna take a, preliminary engineering study, to be done to determine, how all that can take place and what kind of timeline and permitting process and things. That's not something that architectural partners will do as part of the master plan.
That's all I got.
Mr. Carr?
EMS council did not meet due to weather and that team being called to staff their firehouses just in case. Social services is in the process of advertising for and receiving applications for director position. We've not yet. That's door still open. So still waiting on that. Hopefully have a report at our next meeting. That's it.
First, I want to thank staff for, we had some friends from Rappahannock County Group Board of Supervisors who came down because they're looking to remodel the courthouse, and Katie and Mr. Trussell were excellent assets in that conversation for them. They, although they're the county half the size of us, they want to figure out how to incorporate their existing courthouse or build new, and so they had a great time. Thank you all so much, and Thomas Trussell, thank you so much as well. We had the TJPDC meeting. Basically, it's pretty much, we're centered towards a lot of transportation issues north of us, but with the internet build out that TJPDC is doing on a regional basis, it's just exponential now. And very much centered on the Regional Housing Partnership coming up next week. I do hope if you all are attending. I know some of you have already registered. I know we have some members in the audience who've registered, which is great, and that was brought up. Nelson County should have good representation in attendance. It's funny we talk about the historical piece of Shipman today. As someone who's lived there his whole life, and the only place I know is Elma. When we talk about homes, right? And bringing up the topic of what does housing stock look like in Nelson, what is the history of it, how does it exist? One day I was driving down Peabody, and I just counted how many homes that were on that street when I was a kid that someone lived in, that it's dilapidated, it's no longer to be lived in. And that context, then you just start driving up and down other houses, Stevens Cove, Freshwater Cove, and so many other places, and you can just pick out these homes. And you're like, wow, you always forget what happens over a generation of people who may leave and never come back, or who just age, and just it is that dilapidated. And as soon as that individual passes away or moves on, there's no hope for that inventory whatsoever. So that was kind of an interesting observation I was making the other day. So I'm going to probably drive around a little bit, especially in the hollow that I've always known, and talk about some of that story in the rural context of if the family doesn't refix it, if it doesn't get redone, then yes, Nelson County may have the same population today, but that population is living in an entirely different housing stock than it was 100 years ago. So what does that replacement look like? How does that context work? What are the things that impact that? So I'm pretty excited to get some more thoughts in on that, and figure out some data points, and make Jeremy tell me all sorts of numbers so that I can bring it up. I also need to meet with Susan and talk to her some too about 911 addresses over the last 50 years. So that's it. That's all I got. So the thought process with 911 addresses is if you get a new 911 address, probably 9 out of 10 times that's a new residential home. So if there's any data collecting, which I'm sure we have over the last, let's just say 20, 30 years, which I imagine they have some level of that, I don't know, you can forewarn her. So
Yeah, I'm trying to recall when maybe the 911 system was put in place.
it's true,
There may not be as much data as here.
right?
Thank you.
True. But even then, I can benchmark it off the last decade or two. So just stuff like that. Squirrel with me. Beyond that, I don't think I'm missing anything, Candy. Cal Hill, or not Cal Hill, the walk around the Larkin property was fun. That was great. We only lost a couple of you. David disappeared.
I was playing in the creek.
Yep, he got stuck in the creek. Ernie and I stuck it out. We were fine. That's all I got. Moving on. Appointments. We do have some appointments to do. One of them is the EDA. We have an applicant, or is it one or two? Two. Larry Saunders and John Conaway. I guess both of those people can fill in a role there. I don't know why I was thinking it was just one. Do we have a motion to put Larry and John? Well, we need to pick it for that specific position because of the terms. Is there any thoughts on putting Larry Saunders in the spot that Robert Doyle was in?
I just wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
What's the specific role of the Economic Development Authority? I mean, what do they have jurisdiction over?
I mean, their main vehicle is to be a vehicle for bond issuances for, they're the vehicle for bond issuances for the county, and the school division. I mean, I think they meet monthly, and I think or quarterly, they're quarterly. I think they probably maybe can do more than what they're currently doing.
When you say they coordinate bond issues, how does that work? What's that process? I know we had to deal with that just recently.
Right, so, I think typically it's a ground lease to the EDA that, is the collateral for the bonds, and then it gets leased back to the county. And that's just the financing vehicle that's, approved by the state for bond issuance.
Right.
If, let's say if they like refuse to approve a bond for the social service buildings, can we do that?
I think they maybe can,
They can.
but
But
this board appoints
yes, I would
those
say,
members.
I would emphasize
Other
that they
means.
also work at the pleasure of this board.
Right.
And in the event something of that nature happens, people can be removed and a new board put on.
You agree with that? What you said?
I mean, that's
I mean,
actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No, I mean, I only, I studied this a little bit recently, so I know a little bit intimately.
right.
Yeah, but that is a mechanism. These individuals work at the pleasure of the board. They are a hand of the board in that mechanism with bonding. And in the event we have problems, we can remove an individual and put someone on there that we need to do something, if the board so wills.
Yeah, my only perspective on this, besides that experience that we had, is that the mission of the Economic Development Authority is that it promotes diversity and growth. And I think diversity, to me, is pretty key. And so, without, giving thumbs up or thumbs down on those folks that have already applied for the positions, I think it might be a good idea to leave this open for a period of time and see if we can get a more diverse representation of people to select from and put on board. I'm just throwing that out because, until I saw the appointments, I didn't realize that this was coming up. And it seems like an important thing, especially given our comp plan scenario that we're working on. And then just, if we just put it off a month and see if we can get a more diverse representation of people who might want to serve on that, it might be a good idea and it might not be necessary.
Ernie, the first position expires in 2 months.
Yeah.
The first one that Robert Doyle is in. So we can begin asking for more applications in that area.
Yeah, it says that they both resigned, right?
Yes, and then also
So is
be
that-
fulfilling a special term. So if Larry was chosen, he would only be serving until June 30th of this year. And in that likelihood of them having a meeting is like none, probably.
Yeah, I'm not sure what.
They only meet like once or twice a week. I don't even
It's
know.
quarterly, but I don't know when. First Thursday, this is first Thursday of each month.
Huh.
But I don't know.
I don't know, I can understand your sentiment there, and if you wanted to leave the Kim Bryant seat open, I don't see any reason why we can't fill in that one position until June 30th.
I don't see any reason either. I was just bringing that up so that I can get a better grip on it.
Yeah, and we can advertise for both those.
So I'll move that we approve Larry Saunders.
All right, Larry Saunders is taking Robert Doyle's spot for the special time period until 6/30/2023.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Hearing none. Now, the second one, well, let's go ahead and get the other one done. Nelson County Drug Court Advisory Committee, Ernie, we need to put you on that. This is gonna be a 1-year thing. And then how we normally redevelop our stuff every year in January, we'll repick the board member.
I would be happy to serve. I have a conflict with the first meeting, which is in the first week or second week of May. I don't think I can make the first meeting, but I could do it after that.
Okay, I don't know, Ernie, I have no problem, and if you want one of us just to sit there and listen a little bit,
If you would sit in for me.
I can sit in in the event.
Okay, and I'll check to make sure that this whole
And
thing.
if he will,
All right, well, Skip's gonna do it actually.
Okay.
That picks Skip. All right, so even though we're gonna put you on it, and if you can't make that, Skip can make sure he's there to talk a little bit.
Okay.
All right, someone put Ernie on it.
I move. I make the motion.
Skip moves to put Ernie on the Nelson County Drug Court Advisory Committee.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clark. Any other discussions? Do none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. So with the second EDA position, what does the board want to do? Does the board want to wait? Does the board want to put John Conway on it? What is the thought?
I'd like to leave it open at least for a month,
Okay,
just to see if we can generate some.
that's fine. All right. Everyone else fine with waiting one more month on that position? Won't work for me. All right, moving on. Any other points you need to talk about, Amanda?
That's it.
Correspondence, Mr. Barton.
No.
Mr. Harvey? Mr. Reed?
Nope.
Mr. Park? No. You looked at it. I'm trying to think what correspondence I got. What? I'll do that. I'll bring that up, because I have experience with that. Let's talk, I'm gonna talk about the Nets soccer field for a second, and this is a fun. So I'm glad you're here, Dr. Hester, so I might call you for some questions. Of course, some of you have gotten correspondence from that. I'm sure everyone's gotten emails. I've gotten a lot of phone calls because I have a very specific experience with the net soccer field. I was one of the first teams to play on that field when nets actually started seeding and fertilizing and watering that field. So obviously I know we are at a place where it's the rec facility, the rec, Parks and Rec is using it for 4 games and 3 games. And there is a camp, a soccer camp that is going to be used, and that's just a singular weekend.
That's on
I'll say June 12th for the 16th, 15th.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact dates, but that's probably,
Well, it's something of that nature, and I had correspondence with Mr. Farron, and I believe he had indicated that there was no conflicts with those several games and that weekend. Is that still the case?
As far as we know, when we met with them, there weren't any conflicts with the
Yeah.
dates
I got you.
that we.
So Parks and Rec had contributed their request dates that had come in, and then Nets had put in their request for dates that
Yeah.
week appears to be
Yeah.
a week that there were no existing conflicts.
Right. You know, and I can understand, and I'm not really pointing fingers anywhere, and I just think for that entity, you know, I remember back in, shoot, that was like 09, 2010, something of that nature. They would drag out the whole soccer field, and we'd have to water it, seed and straw it, and we went and run around it, and they made us run around in our cleats to make sure that we could get the seats in the first class. It was a lot of work, and I remember doing a lot of fundraisers with it too. And one of the thought processes of doing that is, I remember we actually had teams that would refuse to play Nelson County's travel team because we were playing at Fleetwood. And at Fleetwood, we used to they would have these like horse camps and all this stuff, so we had to get out there and shovel manure. And so apparently some kids got out there one day, got hurt, got cut, and got an infection. And so there were some individual teams that actually refused to play at Fleetwood there for a short interim. And, you know, some of that also came into play of just having a higher quality team because we wanted to play at a different level. And, you know, in order to do that, we had to get a field that exemplified that to other teams and also to our team itself. So I remember when we got the Rockfish Field going, and I tell you, that program exploded. I mean, we were able to field a lot of teams. We were able to pull in a lot of really great talent. And I have friends who I had played Parks and Rec soccer with, who then got to play Nets, who went on to play college. And that was really cool to watch and have lived that experience. And those opportunities for some of those individuals would not have been possible had it not been for the Nets experience and for certain recruiters to have been able to watch the off seasons and then play. All this to say, you know, those fields are very emotional to a lot of individuals, a lot of players, a lot of coaches, and even refs. And as far as I'm aware, they're maintained by Nets, generally speaking. And they weren't tax dollars paid for. It's on tax property, and I understand that. But, you know, I think it go unsaid if Nets wasn't greatly complimented for their hard work over that last decade plus. And I think probably some of it was just a shock for them. Like they didn't know that this was a scenario, because if they go off the 10 years of them doing what they've been doing, or longer than 10 years, man, it's like 12, 13 years. I just hope that in the future that there is some quicker conversations with them on that. When it comes to picking dates and all that, and what those sharings of the fields and all that can work.
I mean, we're hoping to have a very positive, evolving, collaborative relationship with them in terms of, you know, field usage and maintenance, so.
Right.
I mean,
It's the nicest
that's the
soccer.
hope.
It's the nicest soccer field we got in Nelson. It's better than the high school's field every day. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, you go out and you watch the games, and the players who go out and play, I mean, you get entirely different gameplay at the field in Rockfish than you do at the high school. I mean, just by the quality of the field. And maybe that's a testament too to our fields and how we need to look at that stock.
And our fields have certainly improved, I think, you know, from the time that the Nets was established.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really even use the Fleetwood field anymore.
No, we haven't used that in years.
We used High River, and then we,
Used the
we're
Burton
right at
Park.
the Rockfish Virgin Park, right? It's not even our field, so, I mean, you know, I think it,
Individuals have done.
The Nets field, you remember Mr. Wheaton and Brian Farron when they were doing it at the Rockfish Elementary School 12, 13 years ago? Yeah, that's the field we're talking about. And so the rec departments utilizing it some. And it's just the entity of nets and those who play on those fields and they're playing on those fields have a little bit of frustration. So,
Well, the people who built the damn field, so they want to.
and that would be probably some of their take because I think it was like $30,000 that we had fundraised back in '09 for that field, something like that.
I don't know, I've heard, I've heard.
You remember years ago.
No, I've heard some reason about it.
Yeah. And I just think, if there's a conversation that I can be part of, because, of course, I played soccer at Parks and Rec for 8-9 years of my life, and then I coached for 4 years at Parks and Rec, and then I refereed for Parks and Rec for 4 years, and refereed for Nets. I think we could probably field some of those concerns, that they have. And I think there's also a lot of value that they can provide to you guys and how to have a high quality field. I mean, they've done the right stuff year over year. What else do we want to talk about in this? You want to talk about it? Yeah, pretty good. David, it's 5 o'clock. Okay, you want to call it a day?
No.
David, do you have anything else to say? Yeah.
Tuesday.
All right. What do you want to say?
Well, the walk you guys took, and I was out there and meeting with the landscape architect and all that thing is, if we can build a park that is a place in which people of Nelson County can go to with their children and their grandchildren and swim, being that we live probably in a place where God would live if he lived on earth, it would be like the people of Nelson County could be on vacation all the time. They could have a place where they could take their families and vacation. All the people of Nelson County. And to me, it's it's just a vision which I want people to share. And, is that a directive? I mean, I just want people to think about coming home from work and taking their children to go swimming and having hamburgers and looking at the beauty of Nelson County. We'd all be rich people.
All right. Any other correspondence? Hearing none, moving on to directives. Any directives from anybody? I don't have any. And we'll go ahead and continue this meeting to 7 o'clock. Can we get a motion?
Yes.
Motion from Second. All right, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. It's up.